This wine has great structure and an excellent sense of terroir. What does that actually mean? Welcome back, everyone. My name is Jacky Blisson. I am a master of wine, aka a massive wine nerd. And today I'm going to briefly explain what some of the world's fanciest sounding wine terms, words like structure, balance, complexity, and terroir actually mean and how to spot them in your glass. If you stick around to the end, I will give you another term that most wine professionals argue about. So we're going to start off with structure and balance. So this is the main element really in deciding if you like a wine. A structure is how all the elements that we talked about in my first video, you should check that out. Acidity, body, texture, tannins, also dryness, sweetness, how they present on the glass. And are they in balance? So does this structure, the high acidity or the lower acidity, the light or the fuller body, the big monstrous tannins or the light tannins, are all the elements in the wine, do they taste harmonious to you? Is there nothing sticking out or jarring on the palate? That is a sense of balance. So I'll give you a little analogy if that was confusing. So imagine you're in a restaurant and you've ordered a dish and it's just too salty, or it's really greasy, or it's just sickly sweet. So that one aspect is just ruining the dish for you. It's just taking over and you really can't enjoy any of the other flavors. That is when the balance is off, and the same thing can happen to wine. So you get a sense of that structure, all of those elements that I mentioned, and do they fit together harmoniously? That is structure and that is balance. Moving on to complexity. We talked about finish in the last video and the length on a finish. Do flavors just fade away really quickly, or do they linger for a long time? The element of balance that I just mentioned, are all elements harmonious on the palate? The idea of a wine in balance, a wine with long length, a wine that feels like it's got lots of flavors, like it's got some depth to it, that is the sign of a wine that is more complex, and that usually goes hand in hand with a higher quality wine. You'll notice also with wines that are more complex that after you've opened them, over time, as you keep sniffing and tasting the wine, the flavors tend to develop, as in they either become more intense or you notice different flavors and aromas popping up. That is also a sign of a more complex wine when it has a lot of different elements going out and it gains in intensity with a little bit of aeration. Next, we're going to talk about terroir. So terroir is a term that is actually quite simple, but definitely tends to freak people out. It's just the idea that a wine tastes a specific way because of where the grapes were grown. The climate, the soil, the sun exposure on the parcel of vine. It can give wine some unicity, a sense of place. So if you're a gardener, you'll know that flowers will grow differently in the shade versus in a sunny spot, in richer soils versus poor soils. There's an element of that in the idea of terroir, but it goes a little step further with this idea that the wine tastes specifically of this one plot and is really unique. There's also another element that's important to mention in terroir, the winemaker's touch. So it's all the elements of the climate and the environment where the grapes are grown, but also how the winemaker transforms those elements into a beautiful glass of wine. Finally, the bonus that I mentioned at the beginning is minerality. So this term is very contentious for some reason among wine lovers. It's hard to describe. Basically, for me, I find it mainly in white wines. And on the nose, it's really a sense of stoniness. So imagine a pebbly beach after the rain, or a flinty note. Those are definitely something you will find on a wine that I would describe as having minerality. They tend to be earthier wines rather than fruitier wines. And then on the palate, you often get, you can get sort of a prickly sensation, a lot of vibrancy, a lot of freshness, and then sometimes even a salty, sort of briny touch that people will call salinity on the finish. These are all elements of minerality, and they are synonymous with wines that have a lot of freshness, a lot of vibrancy, and generally white wines. Well, you might love it, you might hate it. That is a personal choice. So if you like this video, please do give me a little thumbs up, write me a comment, and subscribe. Until next time, santé!